Hello. So behind me here is an image of a lady called Constance Kent, a Victorian teenager who in 1860, in late June, was in the sort of centre of a pretty horrific crime. Her 4-year-old brother, Francis Kent, was found almost decapitated and with severe stab wounds down in the outhouse in the servants' quarters of the house that they lived in. Now, the immediate suspect was, of course, the nanny, and also the father as well. And the nanny was initially arrested and was questioned, but she didn't confess and she was released without charge. Now, the detective at Scotland Yard at the time strongly suspected that it might be the 16-year-old sister, Constance Kent, and she was brought in for questioning. And she was subject to quite grueling interrogations and didn't break once and didn't confess anything. So she was also released without charge. Now, Francis and Constance were from quite a well-to-do family in Wiltshire. So after, the case was dropped against Constance and, they still hadn't found the killer of Francis, she was sent to finishing school. But it was actually 5 years later that she ended up confessing to a clergyman that she had actually done the crime. Now, Constance, in her confession, didn't disclose the motive for murdering her brother in this very savage manner. It was suggested at the time, this case caused quite a press sensation, that she was mentally unbalanced, and that when you look at the details of her family, her father had actually been quite adulterous. She and 4 of her other siblings were from a first marriage. Their mother had died, and he had then gone on to have 3 more children, including Francis, who was the little boy that she'd murdered. So it was suspected that perhaps jealousy was a motive here. It would sort of make sense because, perhaps Constance wasn't getting the attention, and she and her siblings had plotted perhaps to murder their younger half-brother that they were, jealous of. Even Charles Dickens actually waded in on this case because there was also a lot of speculation that maybe Constance had been framed or that she had given a false confession to protect her father, who had actually done the murder. And Charles Dickens thought that this might be the case as well. So Constance was, of course, put on trial and, she never recanted her confession and she was found guilty. She was initially sentenced to death, as would be, the case in those days, having committed a murder. But it was commuted to imprisonment owing to her young age and, I suppose, some sort of clemency from the judges. So Constance actually spent 20 years in prison in a variety of different prisons, including Millbank Prison. She was released in 1885, and in 1886, at the age of 42, she actually emigrated to Australia. There in Australia, she actually lived quite a productive life. She actually went out there to join her brother from, her full brother from her mother and father, who lived out there. And she trained as a nurse. She also worked in a girls' school, and she also became a matron of a hospital, eventually retiring in 1932. Now, Constance, when she moved to Australia, actually changed her name to Miss Ruth. Miss Ruth Emily, I think it is. I need to check that one anyway. But there is a picture there of her behind me. She actually died in 1944 at the age of 100, and she died in a nursing home. Taking the motive for why she killed her young brother, because she never disclosed it. She said at the time that she couldn't explain why she did it. It wasn't because of jealousy, and she took that with her to the grave. So we will never know. It's an interesting case that has certainly been the subject of lots of different types of literature, film, depictions. Constance has been the inspiration for lots of characters in literature and film and TV that are, you know, the bullying older sisters murdering their younger brothers. What immediately comes to mind for some strange reason is the film Labyrinth, you know, the old 80s David Bowie film, where the older sister wants to get rid of, she wants her little brother to disappear. But of course, all is redeemed in the end, of course. But it is quite a disturbing case, actually, and seems like quite a nasty miscarriage of justice in some ways. But then I suppose she was also a juvenile at the time, and we always treat juvenile criminals differently, you know, and with some sort of leniency, considering, you know, their tender years, as it were. Who knows what would motivate Constance to slash her brother in this way, and who knows also whether she was actually covering up for one of her siblings or her father. This was, you know, she took that with her to her grave. So if you are interested in more true crime history, and particularly the stories of women criminals and all the complexities of those, we talk about 4 very different cases from the Victorian period, like this one was from, on our new immersive tour, Jailbirds of Old London. And if you're looking for something slightly different to do over Pride weekend, because Pride weekend is the 1st and 2nd of July and here in London, then on the 2nd of July, we're holding the first of 2 sessions of this tour in July. So we're booking tickets for that now. You can expect 2 hours of storytelling, character acting, comedy, but also, you know, serious history and grisly details of executions and crimes. So if that sounds up your boat, up your street even, and if that floats your boat, then definitely click on the link, which I will post in the description below. Hope to see you there.